The party that has claimed for literally decades that there is no right more sacred than the Second Amendment is now trying to take it away from a class of people they don't like. And what do you know? It's more anti-trans stuff yet again. So the Trump admin apparently is reportedly considering revoking trans people's right to own guns because 0.1% of mass shooters are transgender. That's all it took. So now, if you identify in this particular way, your Second Amendment rights will be stripped away. It's an exciting time to live in the conservative movement. Anyway, this started after a 23-year-old transgender person allegedly carried out the August 27th shooting that killed 2 children and injured 17 others. It was a devastating and tragic mass shooting, and it's also the first in America that has actually apparently inspired the government to do something, not to stop shootings, but to attack trans people in a new and novel way. And so, yeah, apparently the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel and the Office of the Attorney General are doing this. They want to classify being transgender as a mental illness, and that can disqualify someone from possessing a gun in the future. Now, as we've pointed out, basically no mass shooters are transgender. They're the only ones that the right ever talk about are transgender, and they have had 2 in American history. So I guess technically that's a pattern. Ignore the other, I believe, 300 mass shootings so far this calendar year. They weren't trans, so they don't count. Don't do anything about guns when it comes to them. But as you can see in this chart, there's diversity across mass shooters. The majority are white, although admittedly the majority of the country is, so I suppose that to some extent makes sense. And certainly the mass shootings that end up affecting 10, 15, 20 people, virtually every one of those has been perpetrated by a cisgendered white male. But if you want to get into ideologies, which to be clear, being transgender is not an ideology, no matter how many times Matt Walsh says that. It's an identity, it's not an ideology. White supremacists have conducted about 55% of the political murders in America. Anti-government extremists, 14%. Additionally, other right-wingers, 6%. And then you get down to other identities, Islamist, left-wing, and stuff like that. So I guess, Trey, if this does happen, it at least normalizes that if you don't like an ideology, if you consider it to be violent, you can strip those people's rights away. So, incels prone to political radicalism and violence, particularly against women. So if you've ever participated in incel forums or something, then President Buttigieg or President Newsom can strip your rights away. White supremacy clearly is a warning sign for political extremism. So if you're a white supremacist or a white nationalist, obviously you should lose your gun rights as well. It's a bold time of challenges to the status quo, Trey. What do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be fun to me to see how the mental gymnastics people do to justify supporting this inevitably, I'm sure, because I've had arguments with these people over the years so many times about like the mere prospect of gun control. And it's like, well, look, can we just try something? Can we try to make it marginally harder for people that are maybe, disturbed or dangerous to get their hands on a gun, or just even anybody to get their hands on a gun? Just make it slightly more difficult, or try this or that, or can we just try something, even superficially? And of course, the response always for years was like, no, you can't. None of it is acceptable at all, because of course, as you already referenced on this show, the ever feared slippery slope that would open up. Like if you do that, then next thing you know, they're taking more and more until finally the Second Amendment is stripped away completely, and we can't take that risk. So we can't get on board with any measures ever, because it could lead to a slippery slope. But I guarantee you, the vast majority of those people now, when this is proposed to them, will be like, yeah, that's fine. I see no problem with that. And I don't understand how it's supposed to be any different. This is of course not the first time that something like this has happened before. It was before my time, before your time. But when like black people started arming themselves back in the day, the 60s and 70s and stuff, those are like the only gun control laws that have ever been passed by any state was when that happened, because that freaked people out. So like there is some precedent for it, but that doesn't make it any less sorry as hell. Not to get too academic with my terminology here, but yeah, yeah, I don't know. And it's also like them, like you said, they act like as soon as it comes out that a shooter is transgender, which again has happened like literally twice, and we have a new shooter every other week, they fall all over themselves to try to turn it into a transgender thing. When, of course, the one thing that every single one of them has in common is that they're heavily armed, right?
Yes.
And that part, like, let's not talk about that part. Let's just talk about the other part. And they try to, make these generalizations based on little to nothing. And it's funny because, like you said, the majority are white. If you want to talk about other, if you want to talk about like serial killers, real sicko, like anytime somebody gets caught with like a dungeon full of like skin lampshades or whatever, like it's a white dude every time.
Yep.
So maybe me and you shouldn't be allowed to own basements. I don't know if they want to like make that a law or what. I doubt it. But it's just also disingenuous and upsetting.
Yeah. I miss basements. I miss.
No, I don't have one either.
Yeah, no, all this is absolutely ridiculous. And I'll close by saying, for those who are like, no, we can never. Second Amendment's holy, because we got to stop tyranny. I mean, most of those people are cheering Donald Trump conquering one American city after the other. So I don't think that you actually meant it about standing up against tyranny, to be clear.